Welcome to yet another episode of All in Recruitment by Manatal, where we explore best practices, learnings, and trends with leaders in the recruitment space. If you've liked our content so far, please subscribe to our channels. We have YouTube, Spotify, and stay tuned for our weekly episodes. My name is Lydia, and with us today is Ivy Paraluman De Borja, VP of People and Culture for the Philippines with Acquire BPO. Good afternoon, Ivy. Thank you for joining us on this podcast.
The pleasure is mine, Lydia. Thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon to your audience.
And good afternoon to you too. Tell us about your passion in HR, Ivy. I see that you've had vast experience across the HR spectrum. So what really kept you in this field?
That's right. I've had 17 years of experience in the space, privileged to have had the opportunity to work all the way from recruiting, where it all starts, to mainstream people and culture, to offboarding. So it's end-to-end experience so far. Passion, but I like helping the people that work for a company and the company to achieve its goal and sustainably grow where it intends to, whether that's here or to expand across the world. That's what I want to do.
And Acquire BPO, and you've been with them for a couple of years now. Acquire BPO is focused on outsourcing services, and there's an interesting hashtag there. Yeah? It's called Acquire the A Life. So tell us more about this.
Sure. So Acquire BPO, let's first start with its mission. Acquire BPO is all about connecting the world in a safe and, of course, flexible manner, right? And that's what outsourcing is about, right? The developed countries that are having a lot of difficulties in hiring for diverse talents that can be available 24/7, right? Anywhere, anytime. That's what we do for our clients. What is the A Life? The A Life for the employees behind, right? The services that we give to our clients is that lifestyle of achieving. We're so big about setting our goals and creating our personal impact to contribute to the goal of the organization. And if we do this right, our organizational goal should also impact, first and foremost, our personal goals. So as people join Acquire BPO, they have to see their place under the sun and what it means for them in their career and their families too, or whatever is that combination of importance that they come here for. Personal growth, career opportunities, a better life for their family. It's about achieving those as you create impact to the organization.
And what are some talent strategies that you've employed at Acquire BPO, especially those that have worked in the past couple of years?
That's a million-dollar question, right? And there's always textbook answers to that. Probably if we talked maybe a few years back, my answer would be, you have to be solid about your brand, right? This and that. But the pandemic has challenged everything that we know about attracting talents. So today, just to be brief about it, our talent strategy is a combination of an employee value proposition that's not about the company, but is about the deal, the human deal that our candidates are seeking for, and positive candidate experience. So it's a combination of two. And when we say employee value proposition, if I may, what I really mean is a segmented approach to offering that value proposition. It means understanding who the audience is, right? And making, I will use this term because normally it is not, there's a negative connotation, but creating variations in our offerings because it has to appeal, it has to make sense, it has to be important to different segments of people that we want to join Acquire.
And how do you go about identifying that? You mentioned a little bit about also the EVP projecting what candidates are looking for. That obviously requires you to have some knowledge of the audience. And how do you go about understanding that? I imagine it's an evolving process as well.
It is. It is. It's an evolving process because aside from the fact that the market has evolved, Lydia, the truth is it's not only the talent market that changed, it's also how business operates and what markets, commercial markets, we are pursuing, right? So, what do they say? When you listen to your CFO, you follow the money, right? So, where the opportunities are is where you go as a company, as an entrepreneur, right? So, what we've done so far is to seize every opportunity to deliver more and deeper services to our clients, both existing and new, right? Wherever their pains are. So, for example, today it's very hard to recruit for software developers, isn't it? I mean, I hear the world complain about that. Where did all the talented developers go, right? All of a sudden, they're super duper hard to find. And so you come to the likes of the Philippines where there's an abundance of talent relatively, right? And there's economies of scale that you can leverage from. So knowing that that's where we're heading as a business, that instead of just having customer service, a little bit of back office support, chat services, now we employ people with deep knowledge and licenses too for our clients. So if you look at those examples, right, a typical customer service agent would have a different set of needs compared to the needs of a software developer, right? And so the job profiles, the persona, right? We're getting a little bit technical here. The persona of the candidates that we're pursuing fit to the job that we need them employed for are different. Clarity is our best friend at this point, right? We need to, from the very beginning, have a solid understanding of what success means to our client, what makes a position successful, knowledge, skills, right? Even soft skills, behavioral competencies, right? And then we go out there and search the potential of the market. Once we've vetted for that, we go back to our clients and solidify the plan. That's where our branding, our sourcing drive actually starts. Once we have a solid understanding of the match between the requirements and what's available in the market, then we deep dive, right? Then we differentiate.
And you brought up a key point about talent, especially the software developers that you were talking about. It's hard to locate them. And of course, the urgency to hire tech talent today is beyond anything we've seen before. And usually hiring for this especially takes place for skill first, right? And the conversations about culture, whether it's culture fit, adaptability, culture add, or even enrichment, sometimes it's not easy just to determine these things from the get-go. So how might recruiters, or what role might recruiters and hiring managers play to communicate culture effectively, especially for those who are coming in, new hires?
Well, first, yes, there are specific offerings already, right? That if I were the technical headhunter, right, and I'm recruiting for, let's just say, software developer, right, that person would naturally have a list of the criteria that that person is looking for, because candidates in that space, they pick us. It's not the other way around, right? So how do they sell? How does the conversation go? It's about being transparent from the very beginning. No wasting of anybody's time, right? And just stating as is what the deal is, right? But we don't stop there, because these are interesting times. These are times for companies to listen. I'll say that again. It's a time for companies to listen, right? Take notes and actively go back to the company, to the organization, to management, and feed back, right? Of course, research studies are there, but our obligation as headhunters too is to say, this is at the micro level what I am seeing. So while I sell this, this is what the market is coming back with. And so that's how we refine our ever evolving value proposition for that segment of the business.
We're also seeing a multi-generational workforce with more and more of the Gen Z coming in, obviously, and they're the youngest in the workforce. So what is your perspective, or maybe even some tips for the audience on how to facilitate this multi-generational workforce in terms of culture building?
That's a great question. I was in Singapore a couple of months back, and this is the topic that I moderated for, right? The differences between your millennials, Gen Z, and soon Gen A. I mean, it's not going to be that long before they hit also the workforce. So today, of course, millennials would be bulk, right, of what we see in the market. And millennials are about, empowering them and letting them have that jive between their personal lives and work, right? Garner the boundaries. They're very much into collaboration, collaborative workspaces, those open spaces that you see, right? Even those we need to be mindful about when we design the workspace, for example. The way that we communicate is very important too. Like emails, yes, for formal communication that works, but it does not for these workforce, whether that's millennial or Gen Z, and I'm pretty sure Gen A. So rapid communication, right? A way to reach you right through their fingertips cannot be underestimated. And I cannot stress that enough, right? Of course, other things would be allow them to grow based on their interests. These are generations who would raise their hand if they are passionate about a topic, who would tell you that they have this, let's say, education or other experiences, and they want to be a part of a project. Right? So it's not about, when it comes to talent development for these people, they know what they want. And so what you have to do is to tell them what the opportunities could be, right? And let them volunteer. Agile talent management is what works. So far we've talked about workspaces, communication, a way to help them grow within the organization as they see themselves. But the differences too have to be studied. And I don't have the silver bullet for that, because there are studies now that say that the succeeding generation is not as collaborative as the millennials. They have somewhat a combination of, how our parents normally are, the Gen Xers, where they value their private space. There's an interesting study about that. And so probably really companies have to we need to be deliberate in our study to understand, should we invest so much in open workspace versus, maybe a certain portion of a floor would be open space and some others could still be, your cubes or, rooms, so that there's a little bit of privacy, so that it works for both.
And there's also some emphasis on having the individuality come out, even in the workplace, right? So I suppose that also has to factor into the spaces that is designed and the areas in which they can project that individuality and allow themselves to be seen. That's
a very good point. Yes, earlier we talked about customizing the value proposition, right? And making it about the human that we bring into the fold, not about, a company with a nice poster out here talking about all the things that it does, right? And how great it is for the world to see. It is about whether they reason out, they connect, and they see themselves in that journey that the company says it wants to take, right? So yes, individuality is definitely important. But I'd always say this: be deliberate in the study to understand how they differ and how similar they may be, because that would have a lot of impact on your benefits plan, on the perks that will work, that will be bang for your buck as a company. And even, like I said, your workspaces and also, of course, the way that you deal with them, the way that you communicate, your talent attraction, your talent development, in all that's important.
Ivy, we're also seeing plenty of different trends in the people space, in HR, in recruitment, everywhere pretty much. We're seeing hybrid work, we're seeing layoffs, we're seeing bigger remote workforces. And some people even wish to go back to their office, and to them, having a great workspace to go back to would be excellent. So what are some culture initiatives that maybe you've looked into that might encourage culture building amidst all these different pockets of work arrangements that we see today?
These days, listening is the C-suite's best habit. I had the privilege to sit down with Dave Ulrich, and I'm sure our audience, because they're savvy audience, right, would recall the name. And the one question that I asked him, because I had an opportunity, you don't waste that opportunity. Every second of it must matter, right? I asked him what listening means today when you are at the C-suite. And he said, today the most effective executives are the ones who, when they turn their ears on, really sees and hears from the perspective of the person talking, and not the lenses of the plans of the organization. And so, to go back to the question of how do we develop a culture, right, that is apt for the multi-generational workforce amidst a rapidly changing environment, layoff, hybrid, quiet quitting, quiet firing. There's a lot of phenomena to consider too, right? It's about really knowing what is truly happening down the ground in your organization. I wish, Lydia, I could tell you now that, we formulated this and this is how we do this. But I would lie, and it will be a sales pitch if I tell you that. What we're dealing with today is the best of what we could do during such a turbulent time. But I'll tell you the values that serve as our strong anchors, not only to succeed as a business, but for us to be chosen over and over by our own employees against other opportunities and newcomers alike. And that would be the fact that we are a team of authentic individuals. We're authentic, and we show it through transparent communication. Acquire BPO is not a place where we sugarcoat when we coach, for example. Of course, empathy is important. But when someone needs to improve, we say it and we ask the person what the person's going to do about it. We give some tough love come those moments so that we don't fall into situations where we fail as a business and will be one of those that have to, for example, lay off at this time. So I hope somehow that answers your question. I do not have, an article writing worthy answer to that just yet, because there's so many changes. We're building the plane as we fly, so to speak. But it's really living up to our values, right? Transparency, passion, impact, collaboration. Living that, breathing that every day helps us really build our culture that we know will take us to our goal as an organization and will integrate, equally important, our employees into the organization authentically. And that's the bond that keeps us together.
And sustainably, because the way you describe it is that values are inherent. It's within a person. It's a matter of routine and habit, right? And when that happens naturally, then you don't actually have to have any initiatives because it already kind of surfaces by itself. It's organic
You
in
don't
that
need
sense.
posters for that, right?
Yeah.
You don't need those brochures or those wonderful meetings where you talk about the sun and the moon and the stars and the roses, right? This is about what's practical, what works, who you are, who we are, and the intersection of all.
Intersection. I like that word. And what are some ways that you've approached talent retention?
Again, $1 million question. So many CEOs, so many executives now scratch their heads and like, what do I do during these times? The world calls it the massive resignation, right? Some say it's the massive revolution of talent. For us, it's the peak of our opportunity to be able to crystallize who we are and who would choose to stay with us. So in our retention strategies, it is going back to the human deal. Oh, so if you were an employee today, who are you, Lydia, and what are you looking for? Why did you come here? Why are you staying? And we talk about that. It's about going back to the why. But you can't do that for a workforce of 10,000 people, especially in this business, right? So we consciously study what's important for the types of employees that we have.
Right.
We would have the studies of, for example, Willis Towers Watson. We collaborate with organizations in this industry, such as the Call Center Association of the Philippines, or the IT BPM organization, IBPA, who would both have the guidance on what works and what does not for our workforce. Let me show you an example. If we are talking about that part of our population who take the calls and chat with our customers for that line of business and those types of employees, cash is still king. So it's very important for us to always ensure that we know intentionally and we stay at where we want to be in our compensation philosophy, at our compensation strategy. There's a sweet spot there that does not just happen. We consciously study that. For the developers, which we were just talking about earlier, flexible work arrangement is already a staple, right? But then over and on top of that, we continue to try to understand what their appetite is. Is it about, let's say, cross-training for another application? Is it about now starting to train them to be a working manager? Because teams grow, right? And who says that a software developer cannot be a team supervisor too, while at the same time doing the work of a programmer? You know what I'm saying? It's still about, where do you want to be and how do we co-create that future for you for those types of talents. For the others, it's really, this is the time I allocate for work. Very important. Don't mess with that. Don't mess with my pay, right? And give me the perks that I enjoy.
Yeah. It's about really making sure both sides, I think, know the priorities and ensure that not just the priorities, but really where to focus on. It's really about focusing and in the short term and also in the long run. Yeah.
Yeah, and big and small data, because you need to bring both into the fold.
Yep, absolutely. Data, we'll talk about that soon when in the subsequent we'll talk about that later when we talk about technology. But just one more question on the EVP that you mentioned earlier. How do you measure the success of an employer branding campaign or a strategy?
Yeah, so two ways. If we focus on recruitment and how that works for recruitment, it is about, first, how many people go through the first. when you create an advertisement, how many clicks, for example, do you get? What is your reach? That's a very straightforward number, right? Versus your maximum capacity. So we always have, recruitment operates this way, right? You have to have your target number. You know what the best case scenario is, right? And then you carefully create your plan to get there, right? So for employer branding, that would be, for example, your reach, the engagement. If we're talking about social media, if this is employee referral program and community referral program, because we do have that, we engage the community and reward them as well for referring people to us. It is about the number of people that's referred to you. Step one. Step two, how many of these do you convert? Right? And the details of that, they say the devil is in the details, would be where do they fall out? Is it us that did not choose them? Or did they withdraw their application? Did they ghost us? Which is which? Then it will start to make sense. The numbers will start to make sense. How much of them do you convert? Right? And then how much of them actually are retained? So those are the three focal areas of measurement: attraction, hiring, retention. And it's a journey for us. So for us to know whether a particular employee value proposition, if we say, do it like a champion as our, for example, proposition for 2022, then, it takes us minimum of 7 months to really figure out whether it worked for us. The things that we did in January worked for us, because for us, it's 6 months before we can actually really say that a person, yes, decided to stay with us.
And it's a very potent 6 months, blocks of 6 months that we've seen in the past couple of years, at least, right? And you're going to look at the disruptive forces, you're going to look at how candidate expectations have changed, and then measure that against your employer brand. You will probably see lots and lots of data coming in every block of 6 months, right?
Yes, Lita, it's gold mine. All those focal areas, we have to pay attention because they tell a lot.
On that note, let's discuss the use of HR technology and data, as you just pointed out. What would you say has been the impact of recruitment tools, such as Manatal, for instance, on talent strategies? I mean, there's analytics that we play with, there's automation, there's AI.
Yep. So, the answers that you hear from me are things that you've already heard of before. But I think the difference really is how I personally appreciate technology in making life, first of all, I'll describe it this way, easier for me. The things that, in the past, you would spend time for, those mundane activities, right, that you burn your time for, gone are those days. If we do it right, if we choose the pain of setting up technology correctly, and if the user experience, because of that intelligence design, is there, then it actually really makes life easier. Second is, you're not bound with time in terms of understanding certain issues. As a leader, I could just go ahead, look at my dashboard, read the remarks, and understand what am I dealing with. So then after that, I have some insights. I go to my recruiter, ask, and have the micro interpretation of the data that I am seeing. That still goes with the word making it easier. That's one value, right? Next is, you feel more empowered, because there are times of the day when there's just clarity in your head. And again, it goes back to timing, right? When information is available to you, then you could actually chew through those data, refine your thoughts, and before the dawn breaks, you have an understanding how to have a better tomorrow. So now, from ease, we are heading to leverage, right? Because now you're armed with data and you know better. And when you know better, you know how to pivot for a better future. That's leverage for me. So, I could go on, right? And how this trickles to, us having more time to bake lasagna instead of just order, and making it healthier for ourselves and our kids. But these are the real life impact of not having to spend so much time doing work manually.
Yeah, doing work manually, I love how you brought in the work-life balance element as well. When you have things automated, and then you have that time for yourself where you invest it back into your own energy and try to bring that up. But at the same time, there's also the some of those smaller things or very important value-added things like the candidate experience, in which you can spend more time nurturing the relationships and making sure that you have
Absolutely
a great talent pool at least waiting for you when you need them. So thank you so much, Ivy. You've clearly had a great insight and good perspectives onto the different parts of recruitment, right up to culture and people development, and how you see each segment of your workforce right now in Acquire BPO. What advice would you give someone who is starting out in the talent space today?
Love what you do, because there will be days when you'll get tired. Human resources, people and culture, whatever you call it today, is a thankless job. If you're here for the accolades, you're probably in the wrong place. Don't stay here for the paycheck or anything that shallow. Know your why and stick with it even on the bad days, because the fulfillment that we get once the outcomes reveal themselves is unforgettable. It's that kind of high that makes you just say and affirm that you made the right decision. You made the right decision for choosing this kind of pain, for sticking it out even in the most difficult moments. So, love what you do, fight for it, even on the most difficult days, because I promise you, if you do that consistently, it is well worth it.
That's great. Know your why. Remind yourself of the why, especially when it's difficult. And then when you see the outcome, as you said, reveal itself, reinforce your why. That's perfect. Thank you so much, Ivy. I'm sure it's our audience out there listening would want to know where to find you, or maybe even connect with you. So where can they find you? You're on LinkedIn, I know. Any other contact details you'd like to share?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn, like you said already. I'm quite active in there. I like engaging with, the bright minds that you find on LinkedIn. There's always someone new that you connect with and learn from. I'm also on Facebook and on Instagram. I go by just Ivy De Borja on Instagram, and on Facebook, Ivy Paraluman De Borja.
And we have been in conversation with Ivy Paraluman De Borja, VP of People and Culture for the Philippines with Acquire BPO. If you like our content, please subscribe to our channels and stay tuned for more weekly episodes from All in Recruitment. Thank you.